And time for our Sounds of the 70s guest for this week. And when guitarist Andy Scott joined the Sweet in 1970, he surely never dreamed that one day they'd go on to be regarded as one of the classic bands of the decade. They rose to prominence in the early 1970s, first hit the UK singles chart back in 1971, and they went on to ride high on the wave of glam rock and notched up 13 British top 20 hits during the 70s. Frontman Brian Connolly left in 1979 and the band broke up a couple of years later. Different versions of the band continued off and on through the decades, but now Andy is the only surviving member. He and his bandmates have recently released a single, which was originally demoed in 1973. They'll also be heading out on a UK tour in December. You can hear my chat with Andy after this, one of his choices of a song from the 1970s, and it's from Ace. That's Ace and How Long, chosen by our My 70s guest this week, the one and only Andy Scott from Sweet. Good afternoon, Andy. How are you?
Good afternoon, Johnny. I'm doing pretty good. I'm still here. I'm doing gigs. We have a new album coming out. You know, life isn't too bad, mate.
It's all going on. There's a tour later on. We'll mention that later. And there's also this new song, Changes, which you wrote in the 70s and did a demo. Then what happened?
Well, early 70s, we were recording what would principally be the first album, a pop album, and we were invited to write 2 or 3 songs, and a couple of my songs ended up on there. But the one I was writing, I never finished, because one of my favourite albums that I picked up from our record company, we were the same label as David Bowie, was Hunky Dory, and there was a song on there called Changes. And I sat down and tried to rearrange words and things like that, but it just wouldn't come, so I put it on the shelf. And a year later, we were recording and writing for an album called Sweet Fanny Adams. That's how quickly things change, which was more of a rock album than anything. And this particular song, because it's got like a pop vibe to it, would never have fitted. And it just got left on a back burner. And
how did you discover it again?
I have a guy who roots through my boxes and stuff like that. So he found this track on a cassette quite a while ago, actually, maybe about 20 years ago. And he kept saying to me, this is a great song, you know, and it just never fitted. And we've come to the point where the new album's called Full Circle. And I said, I think that song might fit. And I've actually got a great engineer who works with me now. He's also going to be a fabulous producer, Tom. He goes off and does these things called maps, puts a new slant on something, and he played it to me. And I went, that's great. We can do this now, and just got everybody else involved. Bruce's drumming on this track is stupendous. I've not heard anything as good as this in a long time.
Well, sadly, we can't play it. I have listened to it, and it's really good. The thing about Sweet, I mean, you're considered a sort of glam pop band, but there's always this heavy rock band trying to get out, in a way. Remind us, what was that first single you produced yourself? Because that was quite heavy, wasn't it?
Well, that was Fox on the Run, where we were let off the leash, and it was us in the studio, and I jumped into the producer's chair. And about a year later, I had Mike and Phil coming back to me saying, I'd like to carry on producing if you don't mind. And I'm afraid once I got in the chair, I wasn't going to give it up, Johnny.
Once you got a taste of power, Andy.
Yeah.
Well, let's play that track now. That's Sweet and Fox on the Run, and Andy Scott is on the line. One thing missing from the festival calendar this year is the concert at the King's. Would that ever come back, or is it done and dusted now?
I think it's done and dusted. You've been there 2 or 3 times, haven't you? Maybe more. And you can see the kind of setup that it is. It isn't just some village fete. You know, we have one of the stages that ends up going to the Isle of Wight, and the PA systems and crew who work for McCartney and Elton John. And, it's a very, very professional thing to do. But the 2 guys who do most of the work, all I do is talk to people and do interviews and maybe talk to bands and say, come and do it, but don't let your agent get carried away with the fee and all that kind of stuff. But we're trying to raise money. it plays on your life. It's all encompassing. So if we ever do another one, I think their idea is to do it slightly smaller and have bands. We still pull some favors. There'll still be some money going into a donation, but we put in a lot of money into the cancer fund now. And I think their idea, if it ever did come back, is a valid one,
Well, let's hope it does. I remember the year, I don't know when I was introducing Steve Harley, maybe, but it was pouring down with rain. And there's this wonderful crowd all out there, all in the open air. Nobody moved. They all just sat there, determined to watch the show and get soaking wet.
Yeah. I don't think I was actually at that show, but I came back on the Sunday morning from wherever I'd been. And I remember working a way of getting across that muddy field to the beer tent, because Sunday mornings was for finishing the beer whilst they were taking the stage down. And to watch these guys on their tractors, doing wheelies, I hate to think what Richard the landlord was thinking of how his field was ever going to come to that.
Now, we mentioned this new recording of Changes. When will that become available?
It's out actually now. There's a video up, the Sweets official YouTube channel, and it is available on all the usual formats,
Now, you picked a song by The Knack, their only hit. And I think there's a story I came across a while back where the record company decided to really hype it like crazy. And the radio stations responded, they're all playing it like crazy. And it was played so much, people got sick to death of it. And that was the end of the Knack's career.
I could probably see that. I've got a little preamble on that story. We were in LA with Mike Chapman and having an early dinner. And he leaned over to me and he said, I'm going to go and see a band tonight down in Santa Monica. Would you like to come? And I said, yeah, of course. So he arranged the car and we shot down there. There was a little table arranged for him and up near the mixing desk, and he just kept watching me. Now, what I didn't realize is he'd seen them the night before. They were doing a residency, and on came the Knack. And I went, these are fabulous. He said, yeah, I'm going to produce their next album. And I went, well, I said, this is going to be successful. And he just said, just wait. And they played My Sharona at the end of the set. And I just went, oh my God, that is an earworm. You'll never get that out of your head, That probably is what did it, It was everywhere, wasn't it,
Well, it is a great riff. I mean, it's kind of repetitive, but when you get a great riff like that, might as well repeat it.
Absolutely.
Well, here's the record. That's The Knack and My Sharona. Andy Scott from Sweet is on the line. Now, tell us about the tour that you've announced.
Yeah, we've been building this for more than 10 years, I think. We used to do maybe a handful of shows in Britain around Christmas time. Not that we ever had a Christmas hit, but it just happened to work that way. And there were like 5 little favourite 700 capacity type clubs that we used to do. And then, how can I say this? We've never been at the darlings of promoters in the UK, but all of a sudden, one of the guys who ran the Picture Dome up in Holmfirth said, I want to do a tour. And all of a sudden, we go from doing half a dozen to 12 to 18. And this year, I think we're doing 14 shows again. But the venues are much bigger this time. And in order for me to perform properly, I can't do 4 shows in a row. The recovery rate just isn't quite good enough. So we're trying to keep it to 3 a week now. And, I start in my hometown of Wrexham, which is the university hall right next to the football ground. And I finish at the Cheese and Grain in Frome, which is about half an hour from where I live. That really is full circle.
Now, good luck with the single Changes and good luck with the tour. Pick a song for us from Led Zeppelin, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, when I was asked, I think I mentioned a couple. The one that we used to do in our set, because remember, before we started having some of the really big hits, we used to pad the set out with music from bands like the Crazy Horse and, as you say, Led Zeppelin. And one of the songs, as soon as we heard Immigrant Song, I thought, wow, we've got to do this. And we used to do quite a credible version because I've got the high voice to do the squeals, and Brian had that great, very recognizable verse voice. It was great. So, Immigrant Song by Led Zeppelin.
All right, Andy, good choice. Thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to talk to you, mate.
All the best. Led Zeppelin and the Immigrant Song, a big favourite of our guest Andy Scott. And a reminder that he and Sweet have got a new single out now, and it's called Changes. And the band also begin a headline tour later on this year, starting in Wrexham on the 1st of December.